Right, hello everyone, you're watching You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. Alright, so I'm really excited. We're doing a video podcast today. I cannot guarantee we'll be able to do this every week just because I still don't have a studio set up. I'm actually recording this from the conference room in my office. So that's kind of where we're at today. However, I've got some great guests coming up next week and the week after. And even the week after that, I've got a whole lineup of guests coming, so stay tuned for all of that. Hopefully, most of those will be video podcast shows. But today you just got me, and what more could you ask for? I mean, really. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of how I got into the political scene, how I got involved in politics, how I even became known online through Twitter, how I got my following, I might even go into a little bit of how I got hired at the Daily Wire. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I hope you guys enjoy getting to see me on the screen for the first time in quite some time. I know I've done a couple videos here and there. I've done some pictures and stuff. But now you guys get the full video experience. And you didn't have to pay for it. Aren't you just so happy about that? So without further ado, let's get into the show. So basically, I started in my political career when I was 18. I got my first job, and it was, well, let's dial it back. It wasn't my first job. It was my first desk job, and I was an independent contractor for a real estate company. And prior to this, I had not been politically active. I was a high school student. I didn't know, like, what I was doing, what I was talking about. I didn't understand what real life really was, and I still don't, even to this day. However, I got this job, right? And I start getting paid as an independent contractor is paid. And for those of you who know how independent contractor paychecks work, you get paid the full amount from your employer, and you then have to, the following year, pay your own taxes. Usually when you're an employee, your employer will pay part of your taxes for you. You have to pay the full lump sum. And you get to do it all at once, one time, at the end of the year. Or whenever you pay your taxes, which, you know, some people don't even pay their taxes until April 15th, or some people don't even pay their taxes until later. But, so I started noticing, okay, I'm taking out a full 15% plus out of my paycheck every month to save up so that I can afford to pay this tax at the end of the year. And I'm thinking, that's a lot of money. 15%. I was making minimum wage, and minimum wage in California is really, really high. At the time, it was $8. I think it's now $10 an hour. 15% of $8 an hour is a lot of money, okay? So I was starting to think, where is this money going? So that was kind of my first real kind of reality check moment into the world of politics. I didn't realize it was a political thing for a while until the whole, it didn't click for me right away. So but that was kind of the initiation. That was Kelly saying, yeah, I kind of would like to know where the money that I made, that I sat at the desk and worked hard for, I'd like to know where that money is going, okay? So then I went to college. I started going to college not long after I got that job, and I took the first college level class I ever took was political science. And I started being exposed to other ideas. I started reading Howard Zinn. I started hearing some conservative ideas because I had a fantastic political science professor who actually did give both sides of the arguments. He made us read Howard Zinn. He also made us read Paul Johnson. I'm not a fan of either of those historians because I think they're both biased in their own ways, but it really was a well-rounded class. We got to read from some consensus historians, which I'm also not 100% on board with. I really think that history is something that you do have to read all sides. You have to have some baseline of facts that everybody can agree on, and then there's always going to be a different interpretation based on who's looking at it, based on what your background is. It's very difficult to have this is exactly how, because there are events and there are statistics, and those things cannot change. But how you interpret those events and statistics, that's going to change and vary based on person to person. So that was the second kind of here's how Kelly got into politics kind of deal. So then moving on to the second semester, that for initial class that I had, among hundreds of others, that was a really good intro for me to politics, because when I finished the class, I thought, I'm going to miss it. I really, it was a struggle for me in the beginning because I didn't like it, but then I kind of thought, it actually is interesting. It's kind of a puzzle, and I'm kind of the kind of person that likes puzzles. That's why I play Minecraft. It feels like you're building something or solving a puzzle for something. So I thought, I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that. So I started reading the news on a regular basis. I started reading Drudge and various other news sources, certainly on the right, because at that point I had kind of embraced more right-leaning views. And then it was February 2010 that I found Twitter. And the reason I joined Twitter was interesting because it was February 2010, so there was some sort of I forget if it wasn't a hurricane, it was like a tsunami or something. So there was some natural disaster, mild natural disaster occurring in Hawaii. And what was happening was my dad was already on Twitter, and he was laughing because the news reporters were hiding out in their bunkers, not going out and reporting the news, but they were reading it from individuals who had Twitter accounts that were tweeting out, here's what's happening. I'm at my house and this is what I'm seeing. Here's some pictures. This is what's happening. That's what's happening. And I thought, that's amazing. Individuals are controlling the news. Individuals are feeding the news. These news anchors that have no access to these areas because they don't live there are having to read from these individuals, these private individuals who are not journalists, who are actually reporting the news as it happens, as it really happens, not as the news reporters are just making it up, who are not there. So that was why I joined Twitter. I thought, I gotta get involved in this. I gotta influence things. I want to do stuff. And the funny part is how it all ended up. I actually did do some influencing of my own later on. So that's basically where I come from. I know I've got quite a few new followers and some people that weren't familiar with me before, and then people who are familiar with me, who watched my shows from years ago and who have been following me even since 2010. But maybe you guys haven't heard those stories. But that's basically how I came on the scene and why I started getting involved politically, which is interesting now because I've kind of not checked out entirely, but I backed off from politics significantly in comparison to where I was back then. But that's basically where I came from. So fast forward, I graduate college, I do all this stuff, and I'm still, I'm going to we're talking, this is over the course of 5 or 6 years or so. And I've been going to local, political gatherings and stirring up trouble. And by stirring up trouble, this is the funny thing. By stirring up trouble, I would go and actually ask uncomfortable questions. So here's a good example. This was, 2015 or 2016. I'm trying to think. And I went to a local water utility meeting, and the powers that be were trying to explain to the local community why they were going to be raising our water rates by 80%. And that sounds like a pretty insane number. And that's what I went there to say. And I thought that I was pretty, respectful. I wasn't rude. I wasn't mean. I just said, hey, I can't remember. I was 24, 25 at the time. And I said, hey, I'm a young person, and I know I lived in a community at the time that was struggling to retain its younger population. It was becoming more and more of a retirement community, and they were losing a lot of their younger people. and it was an issue that was brought up often. And so I said, hey, I'm one of those younger people that you guys are trying to keep in your community, you know, to pay the taxes and pay the, you know, health insurance and all the rest of it to sustain the retirement segment of the population. And I can't afford this. I can't afford this 80% raise. And I know you guys are trying to fix things and you're trying to, you know, repair things, but, you know, there's got to be other ways that you can cut. And a little bit of backstory. The particular utility whatever organization that is in the community that I had been living in was rather frivolous in how they handled their money. There were lots of ways that they could have cut that they were refusing to cut. And so that's one of the reasons I brought this up. I said, aren't there other options other than just raising the rates? I know there's a lot of other impoverished people in the area that, you know, I'm sure they're in the same boat that I am. They can't afford this either. And the reaction from the guy was essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, but this was his reaction, go get a new job and move away if you can't afford to live here. This area I was living in is not it's not the pristine, it's not the Los Angeles County, it's not San Francisco, it's like the rural area of California. It is not an expensive area to live in. However, it is rather impoverished. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I guess you really don't want the young people here. I guess you really don't want people to be paying their taxes. And so I ended up coming back to a follow-up meeting where the guy denied having had the conversation with me, and he did not realize I was in the audience at the time. And so I stood up and I said, hi, I'm right here. And I remember that conversation. Blew up the whole room. I've actually got the video on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and look at it. But it was, those were the kinds of things that I was getting involved in. I was at a town hall event with Tom McClintock, where people were going crazy and screaming and holding up signs, and I got up, and this is also on video, you can check it out on my YouTube. I got up and I said, I'm here to support Tom McClintock because, and I can't, I'm paraphrasing because I can't quite remember exactly what I said, but I said I came there to support the poor Republican congressman who whether you agree or disagree with his politics or not, he's the sweetest old man. And for people to come up there and this mad crowd just screaming at him is just completely A, disrespectful, and B, nobody is going to listen to you when you scream and cry like a child. That the kind of tantrums, and it's really appalling to me that there are so many adults that are 10, 20, even 30 years older than me that say that that's perfectly acceptable behavior when you disagree with somebody's politics. No, it's not. It's not acceptable behavior to scream at your congressman and expect that you're going to get heard or expect that he's going to change his mind. He's probably going to just double down because he feels more and more justified that the people opposing him are acting like children. And so those are the kinds of things that I would get involved in. So I just fast forwarding a lot of years of doing this, a lot of years of getting involved in politics on that level, and I was a part of the original Tea Party. I did a lot of Tea Party campaigns through Twitter. I was part of the TCOT back in the day. I campaigned for Ted Cruz when he first ran for senator, and that was through Twitter. Most of my political involvement has always been through Twitter. I was part of the hashtag Stand With Rand. I was part of the hashtag Stand With Cruz and all those different things, the filibusters and the government shutdowns. And Barack Obama really had a huge influence in my desire to be involved in politics because he represented everything that I stood against as far as government control, as far as dividing people based on race. All of those things are things that I do not stand for, and therefore seeing Obama, also his stance on abortion, his pro-partial birth abortion stance was abhorrent. I became pro-life actually in 2015 because of Twitter, because I was politically active. However, and I was conservative, like I was on the right, but I felt like the pro-life position was one that people really had to it was a requirement. You know, you check the Christian box and you automatically have to be pro-life. Well, I don't want to automatically have to be anything, especially if I don't understand it. And so I would not have classified myself as pro-life prior to 2015. However, in 2015, the sting operation came out that it was the Center for Medical Progress. They went undercover with Planned Parenthood executives and basically solicited them, asking for deals on how to get baby body parts. And this is going to get really gruesome, but the videos that they put out not only showed executives over lunch bartering over these body parts that were being aborted, but also like shots of the petri dishes that the body parts were laying in. And it was by that point, I think there were a series of 12 videos, and I could not get past the third video. I made it through the first one. The second one was really, really mild. And then the third one was like really gruesome. And I don't even think I finished the third one. But it was at that point that I became pro-life. And that's one of the things that I would recommend for anybody who's on the fence. If you're looking to push yourself one way or the other, instead of being in this wishy-washy position, go look at the actual reality. I needed to see the actual reality. I didn't want the euphemisms. I didn't want the, oh, you have to because you checked this box, so you have to check this box argument. I didn't want any of that. So that's basically my conservative history. And then I actually got involved in the conservative industry years and years and years later. I think I was 25, I want to say. Was it? Yeah, I think I was 25. I was 24 so basically the story goes, I was in college. I was a huge fan of Ben Shapiro. I watched his Piers Morgan interview in 2013, and I went out and bought his book. I read his whole book. It was a huge shot in the arm to me because I was very disappointed after the 2012 election. There had been some other personal disasters in my personal life at the time, and so seeing Ben Shapiro as a young guy who he was 28 at the time he did that interview. I'm 28 now, so that just tells you how young he was when he did it. Just seeing that was a huge shot in the arm, that somebody could, with a positive attitude, go on TV and debate somebody. Again, totally good attitude about it, but he drove the points home, and he did it with a smile on his face. And that was a huge shot in the arm to me, being very depressed after the 2012 election and losing to Barack Obama once again. So I bought his book in 2013. I started listening to his radio show, which is how I happened upon Alicia Krause. And then I was a huge fan of him forever and on. So then we move on to 2015. The Daily Wire starts. And I had noticed that the Daily Wire did not have a Twitter site. So I went ahead and made them a Twitter site. And long story short, I got hired, and I have a Twitter site. So I worked for the Daily Wire for 3 years, and that was an exciting and a very maturing experience. And now I have moved on from that. Still a huge fan of Ben Shapiro, and I really appreciate the opportunity that I had there. But I'm moving back into the podcast realm and kind of backing away from politics a little bit, because I will say politics can become an obsession. And there is a certain point when it's too far and you have to ground yourself back in reality again. So there are more important things, but I just kind of wanted to give a recap of this is where I had been for the last 10 years. This is my 10-year anniversary of being involved in politics, because I started when I was 18 and I'm 28 now. So, that's basically the story of my political involvement. And, if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe and all that good stuff. But let me know what you thought. And if you guys have any interest in politics, or you're not interested in politics, but you enjoy podcasting or anything, I love to interact with people. And I know that people have watched my other shows, which have been wildly different. They've usually been panel shows where I bring people on. These kinds of shows I'm really trying to do with one-on-one guests, and I think the one-on-one guests, you get more out of the interview. We get to go a little bit more in depth rather than just, hitting shallow points. Not to say that the panel interviews weren't good. I mean, I had some fantastic guests on. I had Ali Stuckey, I had Ben Shapiro, I had Alicia Krause, I had Antonia Okafor. I hope to have all of those people on again at some point. I think I even had Michael Knowles on. I did have Michael Knowles on, yeah. Well, I'll have to have Michael Knowles on this show again as well. But, yeah, basically, this is kind of a revamp of my old show, but in a little bit of a different form, a little bit easier to manage, but you guys are getting it on a regular basis because my old shows were monthly and now these are weekly. So I hope you guys have been enjoying the kind of content I've been putting out. If you have any questions, again, please submit them, like and subscribe, and I will talk to you and you can watch on the next episode.